The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Road to Recovery, Expense Reduction Using Spend Management. My name is Ty, and I will be your moderator for today's event. This event is being presented by CFO Daily News and is being sponsored by StrategicSource. StrategicSource has served over 1,000 companies, offering spend management solutions, sourcing support, implementation management, and supplier compliance to maximize the company's limited resources and expertise, so they focus on growing their business and improving profitability. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in the control panel. If they're regarding the subject being presented, I'll add them to the queue for questions at the end. Now I'd like to introduce your speaker, Doug Austin, President of StrategicSource. A little bit about Doug Austin. Doug started StrategicSource, a spend management consulting company, back in 2000, with a mission to help organizations reduce their expenses. The company has helped over 1,000 companies increase their profits through cost reduction strategies. Today, Doug will provide you with a few spend management best practices they have developed over these past 20 years. Doug, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you, Ty. Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. What we hope to do today in the time that we have is run through a number of slides and a number of tools to help prepare you to take a look at your organization on the expense side, develop some strategies to reduce costs. I think there's a universal desire with COVID right now to examine the organization, look for opportunities to reduce costs and take those out. StrategicSource has been in this space for over 20 years, and we have a track record of around 24% annually for our clients. So we'll show you some of those techniques and strategies today, and at the end of it, we'll provide you with a best practice survey if you're interested. Just reach out to us via email and we'll send that off, and you can kind of assess then your organization as well. So with that, we'll get started. StrategicSource has been in business over 20 years. We are the leading provider of spend management in a number of different vertical markets. We have experience in about 130 expense categories. We'll show you what that is. Our expertise is really around planning, spend extraction and coding, assessments, quoting, supplier quoting, supplier management and compliance audits, and then we have a number of certified suppliers as well, meaning that we've got competitive pricing, business terms. Companies right now are examining their expense structure, and it's a perfect time to do that, especially now as you start to look at your 2021 plan. This is a good time to look at your expenses on the service and supply side and try to set some objectives to reduce costs, take costs out of the business, and improve your profitability for 2021. We don't know what's going to happen. So the topics we'll cover today are the profit improvement opportunity, assessing your own organization, kind of the scope of work, supply and service cost reduction opportunities, and then we'll talk about some new revenue and audit opportunities as well. So not only are there expense categories that you can attack on the supply and service side, but there are a number of audit recovery opportunities out there as well that you might want to consider. So spend management. It's been described as the last gold mine for management to control direct and indirect costs. So why is that? Well, in a lot of organizations, everybody focuses their time on the direct materials, the direct services, but they tend to leave the indirect alone. And that spend can add up. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. It can add up to quite a sizable portion of your annual revenues, and the opportunity to reduce costs is pretty significant there. The reason it's oftentimes left, a company may have a purchasing department that's focused on the direct materials, buying steel or buying wood or manufacturing services or whatever it is. But they don't spend a lot of time on the credit card processing, the office supplies, the print, the life insurance, and so forth. They leave that to other people in the organization to take care of when they have time. And that's probably the primary reason. There's just not enough time. In many cases, it's probably the primary reason that we see 24, 25% cost reduction year after year in those categories. So that becomes the opportunity for you. It's the last gold mine. It's an area that most management doesn't focus on, and today now you'll be able to do that and generate some benefit. So we've got some polling questions coming in here. And I'm not seeing any. Ty, do you have those questions?
Yes, they are on the first one is on the screen and we're collecting responses. What percent of revenue is your company producing compared to October 2019? And it looks like it's a pretty mixed bag here. So I will close this one in a few seconds, give folks about 5 more seconds to respond. And
the reason we ask that revenue question is oftentimes indirect expenses are a good reflection of a percentage of that revenue, and that will help you to understand what the opportunities are.
yes, and as you can see, majority of the folks answered 90 to 100%, and then 70 to 90%. And moving along to our next question. How much do you think you can save on your indirect expenses? Please choose one of the responses below, and I'll give everyone about 15 more seconds to respond. Again, it seems like everybody's pretty much in the same boat in the audience here, so I will share those responses now. So about half said 0 to 10%, and the other half said 10 to 20%. And moving on to our final question. How much has the recent COVID mandated restrictions accelerated your spend management? And I'll give everyone about 25 seconds to respond. All right, and it looks like a majority of the folks said they are making changes. So with that, Doug,
Okay, thank
to
you very much, Ty. So now let's talk about your profit improvement opportunity. What does this look like if you attack spend management within your organization? Well, spend management, the benefits are really going to be, as outlined up here in the upper right-hand side, cash flow and profitability, where it's going to help you save time and be more efficient, improve team accountability, improve efficiency and effectiveness, and lastly, reduce risk. So spend management, a good spend management program can bring all of those benefits to your organization. What is spend management? Well, we like to describe it as these 6 components. If you start up here at the 12 o'clock position, it's a spend analysis. What am I spending and with whom? It's spend planning. What categories am I going to quote or renegotiate? It's strategic sourcing. It's the process of going out for, with an RFQ or quoting or bidding or whatever your requirements are in your particular company. The next part of spend management is then implementing those solutions. Number 5 is managing those solutions, and number 6 is auditing those solutions, auditing the suppliers to make sure that you get what you paid for. So in order to be effective, spend management program really needs to take into account all 6 of those pieces. So we just asked this as one of the polling questions, and so here's a slide that depicts revenue. Here's a $25 million company, 50, 100, and $300 million. And we are very conservative here. We're assuming 4% spend as a percent of revenue. Now, we've seen companies that have, we've never seen anybody lower than 4%, but we've certainly seen companies as high as 45%. We worked with a major heavy trucking company that did, $1.5 billion in revenue, and almost 45% of that revenue was in supplies and services. So this is very conservative. Our average savings, as I mentioned earlier today, is about 25% of that spend number. So a $25 million group is likely to spend $1 million on supplies and services. $50 million group, $2 million, and you can figure it out from there. If the savings are 25%, that's pretty significant. Again, we're going to be very conservative here, and instead of saying 25, we're going to average savings at 18%. And so for that $25 million company, an opportunity should be at least $180,000 a year in bottom line profits. For a $50 million company, 360, and you can see it. Cash flow to the bottom line. That's what this bottom line represents. And you really need to ask yourself, what kind of sales do you need to generate that would produce that kind of net profit for your organization? Obviously, you can't save yourself into profitability in most cases, but you can sure add a significant bump to the bottom line by managing spend more effectively. So there's really 8 major benefits of spend management. There's hard dollar cost reductions that are measurable. We can certainly see supply-based reductions. We don't need 10 suppliers in an expense category when one will do well enough. We want to get fixed pricing for 12 months or more so that you can plan on those cost savings and you can budget around it. We know that those savings will be auditable. If you've done a good job with your supplier, when those invoices come in, we can do spot audits. We want to seek standardization of supplies and services. We want to encourage your employees to buy the $8 stapler, not the $28 stapler. So we want to standardize around the low-cost, effective items. Not necessarily the cheapest item, but what you need in your organization, but taking away the ability for employees to buy whatever the heck they want. We want consumption visibility. We want to be able to see what we bought, and as I mentioned just previously, we want to channel those spend dollars into the most effective, cost-effective items we can. We want a controlled process with purchasing approvals and some structure. And finally, we want online access to supplier pricing and contracts. So that's the major benefit of a spend management program. So we want to talk now about assessing your organization. Spend research, there's a number of groups out there that do research, but net they're saying that 50 to 55% of every dollar is in purchase products. Any reductions in procurement costs flow directly to the bottom line, and really procurement, purchasing, spend management, however you describe it, is really the key to competitive advantage. So again, research says that if you centralize purchasing, you'll generally save 25% of your spend, and that is borne out certainly by our results. There's 2 primary groups if you want to look them up. Aberdeen is a big one in the East Coast, and Gartner Group. But if you look up any of that research, it'll pretty much validate what I'm telling you today. So we've developed a best practice assessment, and again, as I mentioned at the front of this webinar today, that if you contact us afterwards, we'd be happy to provide you with this tool, but it looks at 15 different areas. It's going to look at your purchasing structure, your policies, your resources. Do you have objectives in place? Do you have the data available? Do you have a sourcing plan or a spend map plan? We take a look at your sourcing process. We look at contract management. Do you have a contract tracker? Do you have a supplier management process? Are you managing your supply base effectively? And here's a question I would ask you. If you're spending money in 100 different categories, do you really need 500 different suppliers? So you can waste a lot of money having too many suppliers here. And that's why we delve into that question. Purchase orders and controls. We look at that. Do you have terms and conditions for your suppliers? Kind of that fine print that protects you in any dispute with a supplier. Do you have the right payment process controls in place? And what we're after here is to try to get to a three-way match. Ideally, you want to have a purchase order, an invoice that comes in from the vendor, and a packing slip off the package, and they should all match up. That's a three-way match. If you do anything less than a three-way match, you open your organization up to potential fraud or suppliers that might take advantage of you. In number 15, do you have a supplier compliance audit process? So that's what the best practice assessment is. I'd encourage you to contact us. We'd be happy to provide you with that tool. And if you take that and we build it in Excel, it will produce a graph on the other end. So this is kind of I'm a simple person. We know that anything in green, we probably need to leave alone. We're in good shape. It's best in class. Anything in orange probably needs some improvement. And anything in red, we need to fix like right now. So that best practice assessment could be very helpful. If you're interested, we'll be happy to help you out. The impact of effective spend management strategies. This is what we're trying to do in all of these areas. And the mission and scope, we're trying to control as many categories as we can. We want a broad span of control. From a cost perspective, we want to reduce costs by at least 20%. We know that research says that there's a 25% opportunity out there, so we want to aim high. Spend visibility, we want to have a sourcing plan. We want to understand our spend by supplier and by category. We want to end up with long-term pricing, not short-term pricing. We want to get to the least total cost. Again, we don't have to buy the cheapest widget, but what we do want to do is get the best price, the best transportation, the best terms that we can get. We want to focus our efforts on high usage items. So in most organizations in the office supply category, that's going to be paper and toner and ink. We want to spend more time there than we spend on scissors and staple pullers. So we want to focus our energies there. On the supplier side, we want a corporate directed narrow supply base. We don't want 500 suppliers for 50 or 100 categories. We want, at most 2-to-1 ratio. From a supply base, we want a narrow group of high performing suppliers. Again, they don't have to be the cheapest, but they ought to perform, the best service, a very competitive price, and good competitive business terms. On the process and control side, we want policies, improved controls, and reduce risk. If we can pay these suppliers with a credit card, we're going to throw additional cash back to the organization. On the audit side, we want to do planned compliance audits, and we want our resources to be highly trained and have some category expertise. So that's what an effective spend strategy looks like. The ineffective is here in red. Typically, companies that are ineffective have a narrow scope. They overpay. There's no plan. It's kind of a spot buy approach. The focus is only on price, not on process controls and service. Rather than be corporate directed, it's local, it's broad, it's uncontrolled. There are no controls. From a process standpoint, they lack controls, which increases risk. There aren't audits, and there's really no training or category expertise. So this is what we want. This is what we want to end up with. Again, the benefits from an effective strategy is 15 to 25%, fewer suppliers, fewer invoices, price and terms are measured. We have sustainable long-term savings. Sustainable is a key point here. We don't want cost savings that are going to throw off a benefit for 3 months or 6 months. We want something, since we're going through this work, to throw it off a benefit for 12 months or more. We want quoted business terms, and we want internal and payment processes to reduce costs. Again, the cost of an ineffective strategy, I won't go through, but you can see them here. We want to be strategic as opposed to being tactical. The sources of spend map data. So if you want to build a spend map, typically the data is going to come from three places. In a spend map, we like to look at 12 months of data. So historically, if we were going to do a spend map today, I would look at spend from November 2019 to current date. And so getting 12 months of data, I would look at my enterprise system. I would look at any credit card purchases and anything that we paid suppliers on the ACH transfer. So we would generate that data in aggregate in Excel. So now we're combining that data. We're going to cleanse it and code it. This is an example of what that looks like. Here's a GL account code, the vendor name, the GL description, and the job now is to go in and put a code in there, put a category code in that says, well, this is all automobile rental, and this is all background checks, and this is all business services, and I think you get the idea. This is laid out alphabetically, but we want to code every line, and I'll show you what the payoff is. And then over in this column is what did we pay that supplier in the past 12 months. So we want to get this data in order to build what's coming up next, which is really the alpha spend map. So this is a alphabetical listing of all the areas where we spend money with suppliers. Everything is alphabetical. This could be a large auto group. They're buying aftermarket accessories and auto parts and auto rentals. So here are all the categories listed. Here's a category code. This is how much the group spent. They spent $1 million in aftermarket accessories in the previous 12 months. They used 63 suppliers. Well, when you plug in our savings estimates here, and this data comes from us, this is what my sourcing team did, last year. We averaged 4% savings in that area. So again, that 4% times $1 million is $40,000. If we pay that supplier with a credit card, we can throw off another 1.5% cash back. So this is a calculation of what that process change would yield. So again, this is an alpha sort spend map from A to Z, listing all of the categories in the organization. The next thing we do is we take that data and we run it in descending order, the largest spend categories to the smallest. Why do we do that? Well, we really want to focus our time on the $3 million categories, not the $2,000 categories. So we go through in a prioritized fashion here, and we look at all the categories, and we decide which ones do we want to attack in the upcoming year. Well, in this case, we identified them all in yellow. Said, yeah, those are the categories we really want to get after. Now, the next step is to really build a sourcing plan. So everything that we saw previously in yellow is now green. And now we've taken all of these expense categories and we say, here's 30 categories that we're going to attack next year. And if we do that, here's the total amount of spend, the total amount of suppliers, and what we think we can throw off in cost savings by renegotiating or quoting. So now we've taken, and I want you to just think about this, we've taken a fair amount of complexity in the organization. We grab the data, we code it, we build a spend map, and now we have a plan. Now we have a sourcing plan that either purchasing department can execute, or we can round up some managers if we're decentralized and say, okay, Bob, Mary, Sue, Jim, you're all assigned different categories, and we're going to take off and go try to reduce those over the coming 12 months. So this is the work plan. This is the sourcing work plan. So scope of work, I want to just talk about your expense categories and because we've got folks on here from various different markets. This is a chart that shows expense categories that are common to most every organization, whether it's for profit or even a nonprofit or a church would likely use these things. Anything from, and again, these are listed alphabetically, advertising to uniforms and laundry. So most organizations are going to spend money here in these areas. If you own your own facilities, you're also probably going to spend money in these categories: carpet cleaning, janitorial services, supplies, landscape. So you see here that there's another 15. If we back up, we've got 72 here. We add another 15, what is that, 87 now? 87 categories. So you can start to see the scope of work can be quite large. If we're a auto, truck, or RV dealership, well, you can now bolt on another 56 categories that are unique just to that market. There's some audit and recovery categories, some revenue categories, and consulting. But you can take those, the general, the facility, and now the automotive group, and add those all together. That is your scope of work. If we go into education, if you're a school or a college, you can take that general category listing, the facility listing, and now you can look at the education categories and bolt those on. If you're a retailer, you can bolt these on. If you're a restaurant or hospitality, you can bolt these on. So I think the scope of work can be pretty clearly defined at this point. I mentioned earlier when we started the webinar that there are opportunities to go back after suppliers that you do business with, or even the government, to recover dollars that are overpaid. So there are 401k audits that you can conduct and pull back overpayments. I've got a typo here, I apologize for that. There's accounts payable audit and recovery audits, billing audits, cost segregation audits if you have real estate that you want to accelerate depreciation. There's data security, risk mitigation audits, healthcare audits, telecom, transportation, shipping and recovery. So for anybody who uses UPS, FedEx, there are companies out there that will audit every one of those invoices, and if those deliveries don't occur on time, well, then you're entitled to a recovery. You're entitled to money back. So that's what this bucket of categories represents. There are also consulting categories out there that can help you cut costs. So, you know, if you've got corporate aircraft, the employee recruitment side, there's a number of areas there that we can help you with or that are available. So we're talking about scope of work. Remember, you've got a general bucket, you have a facility bucket, and then depending on your industry, you're going to have industry-related expenses as well, whether it's education, retail, hospitality, manufacturing. We just looked at a law group the other day, a big law firm. They had about 60 categories. So your scope of work is quite large, and I think what that means is your opportunities are quite large as well. So what do you do now? You've got a sourcing plan. You understand the scope of opportunity in your business. Now what do you do? Well, there is an 8-step sourcing process, and I submit to you that this process is valid for a manufacturing company as it is for a law firm. If you need to go out for quote and obtain competitive pricing in any industry for any particular category, use this 8-step sourcing process. Step 1, you really want to get the business requirements and the strategy. You want to then, in step 2, source and qualify suppliers. Step 3, develop an RFQ and go out for quote. 4, analyze those quotes and then negotiate on top of it to get the pricing down. Step 5, develop your solution and propose it to your management team. Step 6, recommend what to your management team what the final decision is, and let the employees know that we're now moving from supplier A to supplier B. Notify all the suppliers that participated in that process and thank them for their participation. Number 7 is implement that solution. And finally, number 8, manage the audit or manage the supplier audit and report back. So this process, if I was going out for quote on HVAC maintenance, air conditioner maintenance, I would use this process. If I was going out to quote on office supplies, I would use this process. If I was going to look at a new credit card company, I would use this process. This process is valid regardless of category. There's another alternative, the 5 levers of expense management. So if you choose not to use the 8-step process we just went through, here's another 5 levers approach that we copyrighted, we developed a number of years ago. And this is just simply looking at your business requirements in 5 buckets. What are my requirements? What do I need? What are the specifications and the frequencies? So let me give you an example. If you're looking at your waste services, you might say, do I really need a 20-yard dumpster picked up 5 days a week? Maybe I could use a 20-yard dumpster picked up 3 days a week. That's an example of looking at your business requirements. Number 2, the solution. Standardization, selection, supplier. What does the best solution look like? Well, maybe what we need here, instead of having 5 suppliers, is having 1 with a list of standardized items with 1 high performing supplier that can provide that. The third lever rather, is the financial lever. We want to make sure that we get the price, the business terms right. We want to get delivery right. We want to lock in this pricing for a long period of time. So, what should be included in that least cost solution? The 4th lever is really process. This is important. How do I acquire the product, or how do I acquire the service? How do I pay for it? How do I execute against it? Do I really want to cut a check for every vendor payment, or maybe I want to pay them with a credit card? Maybe I want to pay them on ACH. But think through the process implications of what it takes to get the product, use the product, and then pay for the product. And then finally, the 5th lever is really compliance. First and foremost, we want to make sure that our own employees are using the right supplier. And that's a communication requirement that you're going to have. Secondly, we want to make sure that that supplier is charging the right prices and business terms. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we're using the right core items, that we're using the $8 stapler and not the $28 stapler. Improve control, better profitability, and we're going to get sustainable cost reductions. That's what we're after, sustainable cost reductions. Now we're going to jump into some actual opportunities that you can use today. We're going to cover some categories that you are likely using. I know we have attendees on today from various industries, so we're just going to look at some generic categories, but we're going to try to give you some tips on how to take cost out. First of all is office supplies. I think every organization out there today buys office supplies. We've put some revenue numbers in here, 50 million, 100 million, 200, 500 million, probably what you're going to spend in those cases on office supplies. We put a savings target of 16% out there across the opportunities, and then what you think you could, or what we think you could drop to the bottom line. In terms of strategy, there's really 3 things you can do. You can go back and try to negotiate some invoice relief. A lot during the early stages of COVID, we had a lot of suppliers that just backed off their invoice entirely for 60 or 90 days. That's probably not likely today, but you can go in and renegotiate with your supplier. You can certainly go out to quote. You want to focus on price. You also want to focus on business terms. try to get that 2% 10, net 30, maybe net 60. Pay with a credit card. We ought to be aspiring to getting fixed pricing for 12 to 24 months. Down here, some other strategies. We want to get a core list of products. We want a narrow supply base. We want, maybe we want a rebate program. Maybe we can ask the supplier to throw off 5% of our total spend and rebate that back to us quarterly or annually. So some of the things that I would advise is get a usage report from your suppliers. Build that into an RFQ. If you get that usage report in Excel, you can build that into an RFQ pretty easy. Quote and analyze the results. Try to identify the 200 high usage items, the core items in your group. That's where you want to focus your time. Finalize the analysis, negotiate discounts off list. So for those non-core items, maybe you're probably sitting on a chair mat in your office right now. Well, you probably don't buy a lot of those, but it would be a good idea to negotiate a discount off list for everything that's not a core item. And most office supply companies will do that. Make sure you advise the suppliers of your process, thank them for their participation, and then implement. Another category is janitorial supplies. Again, you understand the drill here. Here's the revenue band, the likely spend, the likely savings, the financial strategies, the other strategies, and kind of the process that you would go through. Here's uniforms and laundry. This is a real challenge in a lot of organizations because uniform companies have a tendency to move their pricing around, move the inventory levels around. So you've got to be pretty careful with it. But we think the opportunity for you should be at least 15% based on your spend. Again, you can ask for some temporary relief. Go back to them and say, look, our business is bad. We'd like to get the invoice is waived for the next 60 days. They may or may not agree to that. But you can certainly go in and renegotiate with your company. If your contract is expiring, within 3 to 6 months, you might want to start developing an RFQ and going out for quote. The market changes. There's new vendors coming in all the time. And the only way that you're going to find out truth in the marketplace is to really go out for quote and find out what pricing should look like. You should focus on the high usage items here. Review the contract end dates. We want to look for redundancies in suppliers. If you've got too many suppliers here, let's eliminate some and boil that down to 1 or 2 providers rather than 4 or 5. We want to shut off services that with that supplier that aren't needed right now. Maybe in my own business, all of my employees are working from home, so I don't need janitorial services right now. So we really put that on hiatus. But look at your operation. Do you need all those rugs? Do you need all those towels? Do you need all the shirts and pants that you're paying for every week? Rebates are possible here. You can get rebates with some of these uniform companies. You have to ask. There are service fees that these uniform companies charge: wastewater treatment fees, environmental fees, service pickup fees. It's helpful for you to understand that all of that can be negotiated out of the agreement. You don't have to pay for any of it. You just have to be willing to stand up and say, I'm not interested in paying that. Let's just get that out of the contract. I would recommend that if you're more than 50% through a contract with a supplier, so if you're in a 36-month contract, you're in month 20 of that, try to get the supplier to open up and renegotiate with you for new pricing. They're under no obligation to do that. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just giving you practical spend management advice. If you're more than 50% through, pick up the phone, see if they'd be willing to renegotiate, and then that's assuming that you like your supplier and are willing to stay with them, but that may be beneficial to you. Finalize with new prices if you're renegotiating, or quote. finalize your analysis, make your decision, and then make it known to the organization what you're doing. Again, advise suppliers, thank them, and then implement the solution. Waste and recycling. Most everybody here is paying some company to manage their trash and recycling. Again, you understand the spend opportunity based on revenues. You can figure that out for your company. The target here should be 26%. The financial strategy, again, you might shut service off. We did this at our facility because we didn't have any employees in the building. We shut off containers, container pickup, and I would imagine you've done the same thing. If you haven't, you got to consider that. Again, you can go out and renegotiate. You can quote. You ought to be looking for favorable business terms, credit card payment. We ought to be able to lock terms, especially in the waste business, which is contract driven. We should be able to lock pricing for 12, 24, or 36 months. Rebates, I've not seen that in the waste industry, but that doesn't mean you can't try to do that. Again, you can try to shut off services or slow services down right now. Again, if you're halfway or more through the contract, you can see if you can renegotiate that, and then I think you understand what some of the process implications are over here. Credit card processing. If you're not, well, you're probably taking credit card payments from clients or some users somehow. Again, we've got a target in here of 10%. Should be your cost reduction target. You can negotiate again on the financial side, the terms, the credit card payment. You can lock the pricing in. We have not seen rebates in this industry either, but there are certainly opportunities to consolidate. One of the things that I would suggest when you look at a credit card payment company is look for a simplified statement that you can read that calls out every charge that they're going to charge you. And by the way, those ancillary fees, monthly report fees, and all of that is negotiable. You can negotiate those fees out. There are two primary things to focus on in credit cards. One is the discount that they charge. It could be 5%, 10%, it could be 2.5%, and then there's usually a transaction fee that they will assess as well. So work on that discount, work on that transaction fee, and then if you can, get all of the ancillary fees out of the agreement, negotiate those out or quote them out of there. Health insurance. We had one of our partners just presented a couple of days ago to your group on health insurance. It's a big opportunity. There's opportunities whether you're self-funded or whether you use traditional carriers. But you can see here an eye-popping number that 36%. I know that the health insurance check that I mail out to our vendor every month is one of the biggest ones that I send out. Sometimes I send it on the 1st. Sometimes I send it on the 15th when it's due. Sometimes it sits in my drawer a while because the thing is so doggone big. But there are opportunities out there to take that cost down. You ought to look at that pretty seriously. There are a number of strategies. If you're interested in health insurance, a particular supplier, we can get you hooked up there. We can do that on the disability or workman's comp as well. Understand, everybody that's on this today, we have no vested interest in suppliers. We're agnostic. We don't take a penny from a supplier, not even a cup of coffee. So we've got pretty rigid rules. So if we make a supplier recommendation, know that we're not getting any compensation from them. That's just the way that we operate. We're agnostic. But we do have opportunities here and suppliers that we could recommend. Purchasing card. If you're not paying a supplier today with a credit card, you ought to think about it. If you're paying a supplier with a credit card and getting points, you're sub-optimizing your opportunity. The best approach is to pay your credit cards and get cash back. You can get 1.5 points cash back on an American Express Plum card. And if you use a Visa or a MasterCard, you can get anywhere from 1.2 to, we've seen 2 points back. It's auditable, it's real dollars. In our experience, about 70% of your vendors' spend will be available to you on a credit card. So we've made some estimates here that, you know, a $50 million company can drop about 18,000 to the bottom line just paying with a credit card, 30,000 up to 127,000. We had one client in the Southwest where we implemented this. It was a $2.5 billion company, and we were pulling in $11 million a month. We're going on a credit card initially, and then we got that up to almost $30 million a month at the end of the program. So just do the math, and you can see that the cash back can be pretty compelling. Employment tax overpayment and credits. This is another opportunity. You can. This is on the audit side, but if you there might be cases where you've overpaid your taxes, your employee taxes, or your unemployment taxes. So this would be an opportunity to take a look at. I mentioned this one a little bit earlier. Transportation, shipping, and recovery audits. We know that. Based on industry research, 3 to 7% of shipments don't meet the agreed terms, or they don't make it on time. So when that happens, you're entitled to 100% refund. You've got to claim that refund fairly soon, but a lot of folks just don't have time to do that. So there are suppliers out there that will do that for you, and you're not going to throw off a lot of cash here unless you're a big user of that service, but it is more money that can come back, and it all drops to the bottom line. So think about transportation, shipping, and recovery as another source. So we've talked about a number of things today. We've talked about the opportunities to reduce cost and improve profitability in your company. We've talked about getting the data and building a spend map. Remember alpha spend map, a descending spend map, and then a sourcing plan. We talked about an 8-step sourcing process. We talked about the 5 levers approach as an alternative, but in either case, you should select one of those to start attacking your work scope. Remember, the work scope was the general categories. There's about 72 of those that are applicable to any company. There's about 15 facility categories that if you own your own real estate that are applicable. And then there are a number of categories on the audit and recovery side as well. So, and then finally, we walk through some examples of how you can think about those categories in your organization to start taking costs out. I'm going to just walk through a few strategic source solutions that you might want to consider. If you don't have the time or the expertise, well, we're geared up. We're a large organization that can help you with that. So as an executive summary for what we covered today, just remember your opportunities are to reduce costs and improve profits are roughly 25% of spend. To try to figure out what your spend is, it is at least 4%, 5% of your total sales. It could be as much as 100, or not 100, but 45% of sales. You probably, in terms of scope of work, have between 60 and 130 expense categories to manage. You're going to need short-term and long-term sustainable savings to enhance your profitability. We talked about strategies to do that. Get the price right, lock in your pricing for 12, 24, 36 months. We've now given you ideas on about 9 categories or 9 opportunities to get moving on this process. So my encouragement to you is get going. It is November 12th. the day after Veterans Day. We've got about 45 days left in the year. It is an ideal time to start planning 2021, getting that data together and building that spend map, putting your team together, and then turning them loose in December or January to start attacking costs and making your organization more profitable, more sustainable. StrategicSource, our mission, and we're really made up of three companies, our mission is to help clients reduce costs, save time, and improve profitability. And we really do that three ways. StrategicSource is really a full service consulting and retained services organization where we become the purchasing or the spend management department for our clients. We do some heavy upfront project work to build that spend map. We build the plan, and then we execute the plan. We also have a technology platform called Expense Edge. It's a portal-based program. We've got negotiated solutions already in place. We have thousands of benchmarks on there so that if you have some time and you're kind of a do-it-yourself company, you can go out there, look at some of the benchmarks to help you renegotiate with your suppliers, or you can use some of our pre-negotiated supplier solutions. And then finally, we've got StrategicSource Learning. We've been doing this for north of 20 years. We have done training in a number of companies on spend management. And we right now today we have three modules. The first module is really around building the plan. The second module is really about sourcing and analysis, negotiation. And module 3 is really around tying it all together. So we've got three approaches. We'll do it for you under the StrategicSource banner, kind of a do-it-yourself opportunity on Expense Edge, and then we certainly have the learning options as well. And even on the Expense Edge side, we have services packages there where if you don't want to do it all yourself, we can help you do that as well. This is we put an offer out here. Would you like to get an estimate of cost savings potential at your company? If you send that into us at that request in at sales@strategicsource.com, we can take a look at some of the categories here. And if we understand how much your revenue is and how much your spend is, if you can give us a couple of those pieces, we can put a customized report together that isn't going to be totally accurate, but it'll put you in. I'm a Marine by background, so it'll put you in hand grenade range anyway, get you close. So our full service spend management under StrategicSource starts at $16,260. We do some front end work to build the sourcing plan, and then if you're interested, we can do a 12, a 24, or a 36-month program. We just had 3 groups that signed up yesterday, I believe, for 36-month programs, where we're really becoming the spend management provider for them for the next 3 years. So our starting point is $16,260. In every case on the StrategicSource side, we provide guarantees. So in this particular case, $16,260, we would provide a guarantee of at least, I believe, 3 to 1. In this case, we would be required to generate at least $50,000, or whatever the multiplier is, 16,250 times 3. We'd be required to generate at least $50,000 in annual savings, and that's a good way for us to demonstrate what our capabilities are. Our next solution is really the Expense Edge solution. Now, we provide this at roughly $1,000 a year per location. This is a do-it-yourself approach. If this is something that you want white labeled or customized, we can do that too, and we can do a number of the analyses and recommendations for you. But there's obviously additional costs involved with that. But if you're interested, we can set up a quick demo of this for your organization. So we covered a lot of material today. There's two gentlemen on here, Chris Austin, VP of Sales, Jim Koza, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and then Dan Driscoll is on the call today as well. Dan is our Director of Marketing. And so if there's any presentation materials that you want, if you want that best practice survey, we'd be happy to send that out to you. If you're interested in a savings estimate with, if you can provide us a couple of data points, we'll be happy to send that out as well. But I want to thank you for your time and attendance today. And at that point, hopefully the information, I know it's not the most exciting information, but it's real. We've been doing this for 20 years. Every year we get the same results, so we know that the opportunities are good for you to take cost out and improve profitability. So now we want to open it up for some questions. We've only got a few minutes left here. Ty?
Thanks, Doug. And we did get a few questions while you were presenting, so we'll read those off as time permits. So the first question reads, while finance staffing levels are reduced, what's your suggestion on how companies should utilize their remaining staff to achieve supplier cost reductions?
So yeah, the staffs are going back thinner today. Most organizations have not called back everybody they've laid off. So if you want to move forward on a spend management program, you've really got two options. You can tap into a handful of trusted managers in your organization, develop that spend map and then assign them the responsibility of going after the categories, or you can use a third party like us, and we can step in and fill that. We can step in and fill that void for you.
Thanks, Doug. And our next question reads, where are SSI clients seeing the largest savings from right now?
Well, we showed you a few examples here that are kind of common to most industries in this presentation. Just the other day, I saw an office supply solution come through that was a 34% savings. And this is with one of our clients. And this is a client that we had gone out to quote and negotiated that just 18 months. So the market moved 34% in 18 months. So there's kind of a no-brainer, office supplies. Health insurance is a big one because of the size of the spend and the opportunity, the level of competition out there. The other one you might want to take a look at is your credit card processing. There is a lot of competition out there, and you can see between 10 and 20% opportunity there as well. So there are general categories. Oh, the other one I would suggest too is your small package transportation. So your FedEx, your UPS. There's more competition coming in, not from the major carriers, but there's a number of third parties that resell those services that can help you take cost out of that. So that's another category you might want to think about.
Thank you, Doug. And for our final question, what do you recommend on how to start the evaluation process and what expenses to focus on first?
Well, I think it's a great question. So the first step is really build some objectives. What are you trying to accomplish in 2021? Do you want to take 500,000 in cost out or $1 million in cost out? Set some objectives and use the SMART criteria. SMART being specific, measurable, action-oriented, attainable, results-oriented, and time-phased. Use that criteria, set your objectives, build your spend map. And once you build the spend map, that data is going to tell you where you should focus. You're going to first produce an alpha spend map. Then when you produce it in descending order, you're going to see the biggest categories out there. And the answer is going to be obvious to you. I don't know your industries, but when you build that spend map, you're going to have that data right at your fingertips that will help guide you to a roadmap for 2021 expenses.
Thank you much, Doug. And with that, I will turn it back to you for any closing remarks.
So we've covered a lot of real estate here today in this presentation. You're 45 days away from entering the new year. I think it's an ideal time. First of all, I applaud you for jumping on this presentation today because you're obviously focused on cost reduction, but it's an ideal time to take a look at your spend, build your plan, and then begin aligning your resources. Get objectives assigned, get some people assigned within your organization that you trust to execute that plan for 2021. Again, if you don't have resources, if you feel you don't have the time or the expertise, give us a call. That's why we're here. And then finally, if you're interested in that best practice survey or any of the tools that we have, reach out to Dan, D. Driscoll at StrategicSource.com, and we'd be happy to provide those to you. Good luck in your expenses in 2021.
Thanks again, Doug. On behalf of CFO Daily News, I would also like to thank everyone for attending the webinar. This concludes our program.